Welcome to Groovecast, the rhythm section podcast. I'm Ashley Walker.
And I'm Charlie Smith.
Yeah, and welcome. This is episode 4. And in light of recent events, although by the time this is released it would have been months ago, but in England most of the restrictions have been lifted, and luckily live concerts will be coming back soon, we believe, and sort of because of that we're going to be talking a little bit about some of our top live concerts we've been to. I know Charlie's been to some really great ones.
You haven't done badly yourself either, let's be honest.
Yeah, as have I. We'll be talking a little bit about some live concerts. You can't beat the experience of a live show. And like always, if you have any live concerts that you've been to yourself that you want to share with us, feel free to tag us, comment, do all that stuff on the socials.
Yeah, subscribe, follow, all that.
Smash like and subscribe. Okay, and I thought it'd be nice to kick us off with maybe some memories from long ago. And I wondered, Charlie, what was one of your first proper concerts that you went to? I know, obviously, your granddad's a musician and as well, so...
Yeah, well, the first gig that I really went to, we'll kind of come on to in a bit when we start talking about the gigs of your dads that you've been to and my granddad's that I've been to. So we'll put that one aside, because most of it I can't really remember. Because it was that would have been about 2005, so it was a good 16 years ago, and I was, I think, 5 at the time, 4 or 5. So I'll jump to the second gig that I went to, if you like, or the first really big gig that I went to, which was Paul McCartney at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, which was in 2010.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was an incredible show. I mean, that was a surprise for me. I think it was a birthday present or a Christmas present that my other granddad rather, had got tickets for it, and we went down, stayed in Cardiff for a night or two, and me, him, and my one of my uncles went and saw Paul McCartney. And I mean,
wow.
Just not just Paul McCartney, because it turned out that supporting him was the Manic Street Preachers.
Okay.
Which was novel in of itself. But it was McCartney with his band, and it was just I forget. I think it was the Up and Coming tour they were on at the time, and I think he was only doing 3 dates. I think he did London, at Wembley, then Millennium Stadium, possibly something at Liverpool, and then maybe like Dublin or Glasgow. So it was only there was only 4 dates on the UK bit of the tour, but wow. Yeah, we managed to get in. And Millennium Stadium is huge. It's a massive venue.
Yeah. And
it's got the big sliding roof, so that the roof can open or be shut, because it's like a rugby stadium. And yeah, I mean, the standing memory of that gig was, I think we were about 2 blocks back on the ground. And I remember it was be about 2/3 of the way through the show. The roof had been shut, because, I mean, it was a clear night, but you want the effect of all the lights and all the screens and everything. But they opened the roof because it had gone dark outside, and it was just as they were about to do Live and Let Die.
Oh, wow. And
that was just, I mean, that was, for me, was probably the highlight of the night, was Live and Let Die, because that was when it turned from being an amazing show to an absolute spectacle.
Yeah.
You know, you had pyro going crazy, and and it was surprising that even that far back in the stadium, you could really, every time the propane towers went off, we could feel the heat coming off of them. Yeah. It was like being hit with a big hairdryer.
Wow.
What amazing show. And I mean, of course, Paul and his band have been together now for over 25 years with the same lineup. And yeah, they're just phenomenal. It would have been Paul leading, Paul Wickens on keys, MD, Abe Laboriel Jr. on Kiss, and then Rusty Anderson on guitar and bass, and Brian Ray on guitar and bass as well. Because of course they all just switch around depending on what Paul's doing, whether he's on piano, bass, guitar, or whatever. So it was like, but that was the first massive gig that I ever went to, and I think that was June 2010. So
Wow,
what about
that's
yourself?
not bad. Yeah, well, like you, I went to a few things with my dad, which, like you said, we'll get on to later. I think the first proper concert I went to was around 2015. It was early summer 2015, and we went to see Mark Knopfler at the Royal Albert Hall in London. And I can't remember how it came about. I remember we were in London for a bit of a history trip. We were doing all the Churchill war rooms and everything. And I think it just so happened as we were planning the trip, we saw Mark Knopfler was at the Albert Hall. And I'd only just started playing bass at that point, so we were kind of trying to tie in the music as well. And I can't remember how it happened, but I think my bass player told me that his old friend was playing drums, was Mark Knopfler's drummer. And he said, "Oh, I'll give you his number or something, and you see if you can meet him and get the bass player to meet Ashley as well." And the drummer was actually Ian Thomas, and my bass teacher Paul. A little shout out to Paul. Knew Ian years ago. I think I might have mentioned it on one of the last episodes. But if not, I think they went on a cruise ship together, and yeah, and when we managed to meet Ian outside the stage door with the bass player Glenn Worf, and yeah, we spoke to them for about 10-15 minutes, I think, about bass and what it was like playing for Mark, and it was really funny. I mean, I think by that point I already knew I wanted to be a musician, but as they were literally outside for 10-15 minutes, and these were just the drummer and the bass player, just at the back of the band, and people already started coming round to get autographs and photos with them, which I just thought was crazy. So that was one of those, certainly one of those moments where I was like, this wouldn't be too bad to do for a living.
Yeah.
And the show itself was fantastic. I mean, I was kind of a bit too young to appreciate the musicianship a little bit, and I was kind of a little bit more into the Dire Straits Mark Knopfler, and now I know his whole back catalogue, and I love all his original stuff as well. There was only one or two tunes that I actually knew, but I remember just being in awe of the whole thing at the Albert Hall, and the production, everything behind it was fantastic. And I remember there was a great supporting artist on. I forget her name. I think she was a Canadian acoustic guitar player, and then she came on and did a couple of songs with Mark, and yeah, it was just a really good gig, and for a first gig, it wasn't too bad. A great experience.
Yeah, not a bad place to start at all. At the Albert Hall, especially, it's a much revered venue.
Yeah,
and yeah, Mark Knopfler, of course, one of Newcastle's finest. Let's have it be known, he's a northerner. And yeah, I mean, Mark's great, and I mean, yeah, as you say, I mean, I'm probably more into the Dire Straits side of things, but I mean, some of his solo stuff is great as well. There's some great tracks in that back catalogue, that vast back catalogue.
Yeah, I think one of the tunes he did that night was "Sailing to Philadelphia," one of the original ones he wrote, I think about 20 years ago or something. And then I didn't know it myself then, but I actually came away like really being one of my favourite songs of his. And now recently I've started to get into it and trying to learn it on acoustic guitar, and just realising what a fantastic finger picking guitar player is as well as all the electric stuff. And yeah, it was a great concert, and also to meet Glenn and Ian as well was just the icing on the cake, really.
Yeah, it's, as rhythm sections go, I mean, someone like Mark always will have a great band behind him, but yeah, you definitely know when you got players like that in there that it's going to be a really, really great gig.
Yeah, and now that live stuff is starting to come back, and I know we've both done some live gigs now that restrictions are lifted and people are able to dance and sing again as well. And it's kind of a weird thing. One of the things I've certainly missed has been the live shows, and I wondered as well, I was thinking the other day what was like one of the last concerts I went to before COVID, and I wondered like what for you, what was one of the last concerts you went to?
That was a smooth transition, that. So yeah, I mean, the last things I was pre-COVID, I was living in London, so I was a rather regular visitor to a certain Ronnie Scott's jazz club. So yeah, that was kind of the nucleus of most of the gigs that I was seeing while I was away. And yeah, I think the last big gig that I went to before the whole virus hit and everything was probably the Steve Gadd band about 2 years ago now.
Oh, really?
Which was at Ronnie's, and they were fantastic. So it was. I mean, we've spoke about them on our previous episode, but Gadd, Jimmy Johnson, Walt Fowler on trumpet, and then keys and guitar, I think, as well in that lineup. And that was just a real masterclass in how to do it right and how to just play perfectly to the track and to what you're doing. Because I mean, most of that, I think everything other than one song was all instrumental.
Yeah.
And it was just like laid back, bluesy, R&B style, jazzy groove all the way through. And then yeah, that was just something really special, and I really loved that lineup. And then I was lucky to see, even sort of when COVID had happened, you know, if in the just before the November lockdown, I managed to get back into Ronnie's and saw the singer Cassidy Jansen there, who's a like West End star and great singer. But the reason I went to see her vocals and songwriting aside, was the band, because that lineup was my great friend Adam Dennis on keys, an MD, Neil Wilkinson on kit, Adam Goldsmith on guitar, and Steve Pearce on bass, which is, I mean, really, it was the best of the London session scene in that room, and again, it was just a great gig. She sounded great, and the band were all on fine form, and it was great to hang out with a couple of the guys after the gig as well. I had a lovely chat with Neil, just about life, the universe, and drums, and a nice catch up with Adam, who, yeah, another northern plug because he's originally from Middlesbrough, but and yeah, Adam's a really great keys player, and he's one of those northerners who's gone to London and really made a massive name for himself down there. You know, I think he works a lot with on shows, and he's done his time in the West End and MDing for a few named singers as well. So yeah, that was about the scope of my pre and during COVID gigs. So what about yourself?
Yeah, I think the last concert I went to would have been, it wasn't immediately before COVID, I think it was around June, July 2019, and it was Toto at the Royal Hospital Chelsea, actually, which was a really unique venue, and I think that was a Christmas present, yeah, it was because at that time I was really into Toto, and we were doing a lot of it in a band that I was in at the time. So yeah, I got treated to see them, and it was a good lineup at the time as well. Obviously, Lukather, Steve Porcaro was doing it. David Paich was supposed to be on it, but wasn't well. So they had the young guy from Snarky Puppy, I forget his name. He was just incredible, actually, and I think might draw some fire for it, but I think technically probably a better keyboard player than David Paich. And when it was in between songs, and like they do a transition into their sort of into some acoustic stuff, he was just like riffing around and just playing background music basically while they all got set. And yeah, he was incredible. I think he got the biggest round of applause as well after the gig. And is it Shannon Forrest, I think, was on drums?
Yeah, that would have been post Simon Phillips.
Yeah, after
he departed the band, and I think they had Keith Carlock in for a little bit, and then Shannon took the gig. Yeah, for a couple of tours.
I forget the bass player's name as well, but I know he plays a lot with Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald, and was singing as well, and he was fantastic. And obviously Joseph Williams was on lead vocals, and he was excellent. And it was one of those concerts where, even though I was into Toto at the time, I was certainly into more of their mainstream stuff. and there was a lot of songs that I was with my dad and we didn't know, but we still loved it because of the production of it. And I wouldn't say I'm massively into that prog rock kind of stuff. They did a lot of that. But it was fantastic, and the production, the lighting that went with it, and just the musicianship. Steve Lukather just was incredible, as he always is.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guitarists where my dad always says it's like it makes me want to be able to play guitar. When you just see him rip those solos.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I've had the pleasure of seeing Lukather myself, not with Toto, with Ringo Starr's All-Star Band actually, and even there they did a couple of Toto tunes. I think they did Africa and Hold the Line or Rosanna. One, some of those were in the set, and yeah, Lukather was on fire. He's just an amazing player, and he's got a great ear as well. When you think of, aside from Toto, all the session work he's done in his career with Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones and all of that, it's like his back catalogue and his CV is ridiculous, really.
Yeah, and it was a really good band at the time. There was a good supporting act. I forget the name of them as well. Another sort of heavy metal band, which again I'm not into, but the showmanship of it all. And just the surroundings of the Royal Hospital as well. It was really unique. You had the Chelsea pensioners looking out their windows, watching it, seeing what the racket was.
Yeah.
And you got Toto there just playing Rosanna or whatever.
Love that. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting choice of venue, but I'm sure it'll have worked for what they were doing, because I know they've done their share of arenas and things, and I think some a bit smaller and a bit different. Definitely, it can really change the feel of a show.
It can, yeah, and I think I was just thinking when you were talking about going to Ronnie Scott's, because some people, I know people that prefer bigger venues, some people prefer smaller venues, don't like it when bands, for instance, like Snarky Puppy, I know when they first came to the UK, they were doing a lot of small venues, like colleges and universities, and then when they got big, they were playing big places, massive arenas, and they didn't like it as much. And the great thing as well with the smaller venues like Ronnie Scott's is that you can then go and mingle with the band, and especially like when you know the members, or even if you don't, you can still go and mingle with them and talk to them about.
Yeah, it's got a certain intimacy with it, and it's almost like as soon as the gig's over, the guard's down. You can. Everyone's happy to have a chat most nights, or you might run into someone in the audience, or. There's definitely times where there's celebrities in there as well, which, I mean, I've not been a party to, but I've known of nights where I think Jeff Beck was in one night doing a gig with his band, and Johnny Depp turned up and got up and played guitar, and things like that, and it's like, only at Ronnie's would that happen. That it wouldn't happen anywhere else, that would just be what went down at the gig, and that's I think what makes it a really special place, and especially for me, it's one of my favourite venues to see any band, because you feel really up close. Even if you're sat at the back of the room, it's so intimate and so small and compact that you feel like you're still sat, practically with your nose on the bass drum head. It's you feel so tight and so close in with the musicians that I think you can lose that a little bit with a stadium show, and that's why they treat them differently, and you have all the lighting and the big screens and all that. But in Ronnie's you don't need that. It's all about the music, which I think is what's really just right about it for me. Yeah.
And I think I may know the answer to this, but I wonder what your favourite concert is that you've been to, or maybe a couple of your favourites if you can't narrow it down.
Yeah, well, I narrowed it down to two. In thinking about this and mulling over a few options, and I know exactly which one you're thinking of, and it's in the top two. And it was that was Paul McCartney at the O2 in London in 2018, because I think as gigs go, there's just nothing's going to ever beat that in terms of what went down that night, and just again. Amazing musicianship all round. I mean, McCartney always has his, as we just spoke about earlier, it was a great band to start with, And then of course they get Ringo up at the end and Ronnie Wood to come up and do a tune, and I mean there was a night where it was, I think Harry Styles and Roger Daltrey were both spotted in the crowd at one point or another, and it was like, again, it was a total melting pot of different people in there to see Paul McCartney, because again that was, I think he was only doing 3 dates on that particular run of shows. He did the O2 in London, which is where I went. He did Liverpool, I think it was the Echo Arena, if it's still called that. I think it might have changed since.
Is, yeah.
And Glasgow. So it was just like 3 dates, mid-December, right at the end of the year. So, I mean, not only did they have the guests on, they also did Wonderful Christmas Time, which is a song that he very rarely does live, if ever. And I think they got, like the local children's choir up, and they were all having a great time. And, it was just a really, really, really great atmosphere to be in. And again, even though it was a massive venue, the O2, it didn't feel huge. It didn't feel like there was 12,000 people in there. It could have been a 2,000 seat arena for all that it felt, because you felt like you could practically reach out and touch the stage. It was that kind of a vibe, and everyone in there was so into it. And you had the hardcore Beatles fans, you had the people who were a bit late to the game and preferred the Wings stuff, or the youngsters who'd been brought up on it, and it was an amazing gig, and definitely one that I would love to live again.
Yeah.
But the other choice harks back to my other great love, and that was when I saw Rush at the Sheffield Arena in 2013 on their Clockwork Angels tour. And again, that was just 3 musicians, top of their game. It was the final tour they ever did around the UK before they retired. And yeah, what a gig! I mean, just having the 3 of them there was great, and the production was huge, as you would imagine. But they even for some songs on the album that was out at the time, they had a lot of strings, so they had a 9-piece string section behind them, playing the string parts, which was really cool, and something you wouldn't have expected to see, with a 3-piece prog rock band. But that was, those 2 for me would have been, I think, the top 2 gigs that I've seen.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a shame that I'll never get to see Rush again. That's just the way of the world. But hopefully McCartney will be back out on tour again, and I'd go back and see him again in a heartbeat. Yeah. So what about you, Mr. Walker?
I think that with the Paul McCartney one, I literally remember at the time I was at my dad's swing band with him, and I think I might have been depping on a gig actually at the time, or rehearsing. And like, it was a couple of the people there had been to it, and it was one of those gigs that I think everybody just tried to get tickets for. And I think we actually didn't even realise he was on, even because I was following that tour. I remember it was his Freshen Up tours. He just released an album, hadn't he?
Yeah, I think Egypt Station was just out at that point.
Yeah.
Or was just about to come out. I can't quite remember where it fell. But,
yeah.
And he'd done the whole the carpool karaoke thing, and
and he played at the Grand Central Station, and
I think he'd done that, and he'd also done the little surprise gig at the Cavern Club as well.
Yeah, and it was just one of those things that at the time everybody knew. Like, I remember knowing that he was playing at the O2 that night, and then all the stuff came up on YouTube, and everybody had stories. I remember people at my dad's band saying afterwards, he did this song, and he did his song for John Lennon, and he got emotional. I was like, God damn it, I should have been there.
Yeah, it was so good.
I'm so glad for you that you got to see it, because it's like you say, it's one of those things you want to relive, and it's almost one of those once in a lifetime shows to see McCartney and with Ringo as well. Like, that's so rare.
Yeah, it was such a special night, and definitely one I'll remember for the rest of my life. But so what stands out for you as the best you've seen? I think I can probably guess one of them at least.
Yeah, I think, like you, there was kind of 2 that I was thinking of. The the one that would have to be the top one is just because of how crazy it was and going to see it, which was Wolfpack at Red Rocks in 2019, which I think was just before. It was actually just before we went to see Toto. Which 2019, what a great year that was.
Oh, it was. It was great.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just crazy. It was at Red Rocks because the thing with Wolfpack is they come over to the UK, although obviously they haven't for a while. And again, they only do a select number of dates actually in England. They do 1 or 2 at most, really. And it's always very small venues because they're not as big over here. And they're usually clubs or very, very small theatres. And it sells out instantly, and the tickets aren't very expensive. So it sells out, and I think that year they had actually done a couple of shows over in the UK. And then it just so happened I was on their website, as I am most days, and I saw that they were doing Red Rocks again, which is the first concert that I remember seeing them on online and just falling in love with the whole thing. And the tickets were just really cheap, like for what you would expect from like a top act, or and there was so much available. And with Red Rocks, because it's an open kind of an amphitheatre, there's no sort of set seating, so you just buy your tickets and you can just go and sit wherever. If you get there early enough, you can just but of course everybody was standing anyway, yeah, so we got the tickets, and then it was like, okay, how are we going to get there? And then Dad to the rescue came in and worked it all out, and we took Mum as well. And it was just incredible, the whole atmosphere. It's so high up, like the altitude. The walk up to it was just really hard. I can't imagine. I know the getting must be a nightmare for the sound crew. And then it was snowing as well. It was freezing cold, which is ironic because I think Colorado is known for being for it not having bad weather like 300 days of the year, and I think we were there on the 60 days or whatever the weather is bad, but it was snowing, and because Wolfpack have their the clothes that they usually wear, and it's usually not like they don't match up what they're wearing together, but they all had these like snowsuits on, which was just incredible. The whole production of it was so fantastic. And I think Corey Henry was on first, which it was just amazing. We booked the tickets and then realised there were 2 other bands on that we really liked as well, which was Corey Henry's doing a Jonathan Ross on you. Corey Henry. I can't get it out of my head now. I need my morning coffee. His trio was on, which again the musicianship was just incredible, and I think it was just him on organ, a guitar player, and a drummer, and it didn't sound like it needed anything else. And then another band which I can't even begin to pronounce their name, but they were like very Wolfpack-esque, and then Wolfpack obviously were just incredible, and the whole production and the way that they opened the show just got the crowd up into a frenzy, and everybody stood from the start of their set till the finish. And then after they finished their set, the Fearless Flyers, their spin-off group, came out with Nate Smith, which again we weren't expecting. It took ages before people were shouting for an encore, and then finally they came on with the Fearless Flyers, and I think I don't know if it's correct to say, but I think everybody in the venue might have been a little bit high, because I think it's legal over there, other than me and my dad, who were just high on the set or whatever. But it was just the atmosphere and everything. You just can't buy that, the feeling that you get at a live concert, and being able to see one of your top bands as well, like you with Rush, and I know you'll have had the feeling as well going to see them, and just incredible. And also just because where it was at Red Rocks as well, which I would highly recommend for anybody if you can do it, go to Red Rocks and go and see something there. And then the other one was just because again one of our favourites was Billy Joel at the Old Trafford in Manchester at the the football stadium there, which was a great concert. And I know he's one you've got on your list to go and see, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been a big Billy Joel fan. Love a lot of his music, and yeah, he's definitely on the 2C list at some point.
Yeah.
Hopefully next time he's over here, we'll be able to fix that gaping hole in my gigs I should have gone to and haven't yet.
Yeah.
List. But yeah, he's a consummate showman and a really great songwriter, piano player, vocalist, all
Singer,
of that.
yeah.
Singer, it's all. He just does it all, and it's all so good as well that that he just makes it look so easy.
The way he does his concerts as well. I mean, it was really, again, weird how we found that one. I think that was 2018, and he'd just done his 100th show, I want to say, at Madison Square Garden, because he was doing that residency, and then it just came up on a YouTube advert recommended thing one night at Old Trafford, and does, oh, this looks cool, Dad, and then next thing, he's got tickets to see it, and which, we're just in our house, we're just mad on Billy Joel, so it was incredible. And the way he does his set is he does songs that he always does, like some of the favourites, and then he just gives it to the audience and says, by applause or by cheering, which would you rather hear, Innocent Man or Longest Time, and I think he does Vienna or Just the Way You Are, and he lets the audience pick, which it's really it's a cool way to do it, and his patter and everything, it just was a really, it's really funny as well. And it was just when again we were far back talking about the big stadium thing, we were very far back, but like you say, we didn't feel it, and because the sound, it just still hits you right in your chest. And
and I think we can both agree that one of our favourite concerts that we've not been to would be Billy at Shea.
Yeah,
in the States, because that was again an incredible gig, and one we both wish we'd have been in attendance at, because I mean, it can't get much better. And some of the guests he had on that, and of course the whole let's fly Paul McCartney in at the last minute to come and do a few tunes. It was like that's incredible, and to any listeners or watchers or anything, I would highly recommend checking that concert out, because it's just a phenomenal thing. And that's one of the gigs I kick myself that I wasn't at.
The behind the scenes on that as well are just great, and they explain how it all happened. And I think the only sort of thick comparison to that now, or the gig that I'd love to see him at, is at Madison Square Gardens.
And on his residencies and things.
I think that's just one of those venues. Again, it's one of those bucket list venues, and he's sort of the king of that place right now. So.
Yeah, I think he is for Madison Square Garden what someone like Clapton is to the Albert Hall. Just known for playing that venue often, but still, selling it out every single time.
Yeah,
and he's definitely at that sort of status with it. And you just can't argue with Billy Joel, and I think his catalogue as well is so broad that there's something in there for everyone. Whether you're into your ballads or you like something a bit more upbeat, a bit more poppy. There's something in there for any listener. Yeah,
rock, like funk. The Strangers. I know the Strangers got Slap in it. Zanzibar, if you like jazz.
Yeah, it's and some of the longer stuff. I mean, I like New York State of Mind's possibly one of my favourite Billy Joel songs, because I just love the whole build of it. It starts off so simply, and then it just comes in with a lovely feel and a lovely groove that just backs up all of the thing, and then of course that sax solo.
Yeah,
what more can be said about it? But it was the perfect thing for that song, and it just lifts it. But that all aside, let's get back onto topic for a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I think we kind of spoke about this, but let's dip into your favourite gigs of your dad's that you've been to.
Yeah, so. I know it's funny because being brought up around sort of music, and when I was growing up, my mum and dad both worked at Butlins, so there was a lot of me and my sister being sort of rushed around sort of corridors and changing rooms and like seeing behind the scenes of shows. And so I'm sure I went to a lot of those. I remember there was a couple of Blues Brothers thing I went to see, which I really enjoyed at Butlins that I think Dad did.
Just before you dive into this, we'll say that for those who don't know, Ashley's dad is trumpet player extraordinaire Steve Walker, and he's a class player. So it's one of those things. And if you haven't already, go and check out his radio show on Coastal Sound. We'll give him a cheeky plug.
Yeah. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. I think the first kind of concert I can remember going to, full stop really, was a tour he did, I want to say around 11 years ago now, 10, 11 years ago. He did the Elvis tour where Elvis was on the screen, and it was Elvis's band with Joe Gershio, MD in it, and all the original Ronnie Tutt on drums, and one of his big gigs. And I think we went to see him at Sheffield Arena, and again we got to go backstage, and I remember they had a big tour bus that the band went on, and it was fun. I think that's where he met the wonderful Nick Rea, Chris Rea's brother, and Nick was the stage manager for that show, and both of them being from Middlesbrough got to talking, and Nick showed us around the tour bus. And even then I wasn't very old, I would have been 7 or 8, and kind of not interested in being a musician, but it was just I think I got a lot more respect for what my dad did at that point. So that would certainly be up there. And then he's done a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to go and see him too much. When growing up, we weren't able to go and see him very much with my mum working. But more recently, we got to see him play in London, and I forget the venue now, which I'm sure he won't let me live down. With the wonderful Liza Pullman and the tour he's doing with her, and it was a Barbra Streisand show, and he did a couple of gigs at the Lyric Theatre. There we go, got there in the end. And that was a very special thing, and as well, seeing him not just in the pit for the West End, but actually on the stage for at the West End. So that would certainly be up there. And I wonder for you, with your granddad, I'm sure that there's a lot of gigs you went to see with him on.
Yeah, I've been to a few over the past 21 years. I mean, I used to go with him when I was 4, 5, 6 year old, and help him set up, and that's, there's some really, really wonderful memories. But as far as the bigger gigs that I do remember going to, the first one would have been Tony Christie, the Newcastle City Hall in 2005. So this was just after the whole Amarillo being used on Phoenix Nights, and then the Comic Relief thing, and it was huge again, and everyone knew who Tony Christie was. And I think on that tour they ended up headlining the Sunday at the V Festival and doing loads and loads of gigs. And yeah, it was my granddad was in the band for that. And I mean, a lot of the band actually were all from up this way, and a lot of them I still work with and still see quite often. And yeah, I remember that gig really kind of distinctly as a turning point for me, that was like, this is kind of what I want to do. Even though I was only 5 or 6 at the time, it was like that was the moment where it clicked into, yeah, I want to do this too. And this is where you can get from being a northerner. This is like and now to have played the City Hall myself with the Dolly and Kenny show, it's like that was even more special, going back and seeing it from the other side, if you like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean Tony Christie's band at that point was a huge lineup. So I think it was 2 keys, guitar, bass, drums, percussion, 4 front line players, 2 backing vocalists, and then Tony. So it was a big setup, a big full show band, if you like, and yeah, just all the tunes were he played all the classics and did a few other things. I think there was a few Beatles covers in there, which was really cool, and all really great arrangements and perfectly played by a really, really great band. So for me, it was like that was at that point, that was the pinnacle of anything I'd seen as far as the musicianship and it wasn't a huge show by that. There wasn't screens or anything, but it was, as far as the music, that kind of cemented to me what I wanted to do, and that gig definitely sticks in my mind for all those reasons. And the other gig that really sticks out was he was depping with Lindisfarne a couple of years ago, and I went and saw them at a local venue in Stockton with him playing with Lindisfarne, and of course Lindisfarne, a legendary band with a great catalogue of songs, and that would have been 2018, I think. So yeah, I went with him and watched the show, helped him, usual roadie job, packing all the gear down and all that. But that was, I have such great memories of that gig, and he was on fire that night, and they played a great spot, and of course did all the classics that you would expect, and a couple of surprises as well, and then he's back out. My granddad's back out with Lindisfarne later this year, so I'm hopefully going to catch a gig or two of that as well.
Yeah,
which would be very nice.
Yeah, of course, and what a great band. And for anyone who hasn't heard of Charlie's granddad or hasn't seen any of that stuff, you can go and check him out. I know he's played on a lot of stuff that's actually out there and you can listen to. So, yeah, what a great drummer. And it's funny when you grow up around music and you can almost take it a little bit for granted, like the concert thing, but it's kind of one of those unique things, being able to go backstage.
I totally agree with you. And funnily enough, I don't know about you, but I still feel that now. If I'm on a gig, and I always try and have a look around the backstage of if I'm in an old theatre or a big venue or wherever, and I still get that same buzz that I had when I was 5 years old backstage at the City Hall. Yeah, it still feels the same. That you know. I mean, we all sometimes have that kind of Spinal Tap moment of, the stage being 30 corridors away from the dressing rooms or any of that, but I don't know about you, I always feel that same buzz when I'm backstage at a venue now, even when I'm working, that you kind of feel a little bit special that you get to do what you do, and I definitely never take that for granted that we're in what I think we both consider the best job in the world. Yeah,
we've never done a day's work. We just do our hobby.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to do this for a living if they could, and get to do what you love and play with people who you respect and who you really like being around. It is, for me at least, it's unbeatable.
Yeah, and very special as well, because I know, obviously with your granddad playing drums as well, it's not often that you can play together, but on your Islands in the Stream gig, you're able to work together, and I know from myself how great that can be, working with your family. And
yeah, I mean, for me on that gig, I'm the luckiest guy in the band, because I get to sit 6 foot away from one of the greatest drummers around, and I get to see him do that every night, and I can just sit and groove along on percussion and just enjoy the moment. Yeah. And that again is, there's a few moments in that show that we always will exchange a look, or we'll have a smile at each other, and I do sometimes pinch myself and think, I am actually doing this, aren't I? And this is what I do. This is my job. Yeah. And some of that, it's just those little memories and those little moments are the ones that I'll certainly treasure for forever. It's because 2 drummers on a gig is not a common thing, and getting drums and percussion on the Islands gig has been a real game changer for me, as far as it's given me some wonderful shows, and we've had some great times and some great dates, and hopefully we'll continue to as we get back out on the road later this year. But it's there's definitely something special to be said for doing a gig with your family, because it just changes the dynamic of it, and we kind of know each other's inside out, so I can sometimes sense if he's going to go for something or do a figure, and I'll try and hop in on it and either put something with it that'll go well, or do it as a unison bit, and that doing little things like that can really lift a gig musically as well. And it's a kind of relationship that I don't think many other drums and percussion combos could have, because I think for me, I just know his style intimately, and to a point where even now, if I listen to recordings from 30 years ago, I can still tell who it is. I know I know what he sounds like, if you know what I mean. I can recognize
sound.
I can recognize my granddad on record at 20 paces. It's weird to say, but there's just little things that for me that I can just pick up on and say, yeah, that's something he would do, or that's the way he'd think about it, or the way he'd see to play whatever it was. But and I know you've done gigs with your dad as well, so maybe let us know how you found that and what it was like from your point of view.
Yeah, I think it's very true what you said about, like, I have the same thing, recognizing your granddad's sound, and with my dad, I know he has a specific sound when he plays his trumpet, and we haven't done a lot of stuff together, certainly not a lot of professional things together, a lot of sort of school shows and things when I've been starting out, but like you say, it's exchanging a look and knowing they're there. Even he always says a thing of, it's like he doesn't think of me as his son when we're playing together. I'm just the bass player, and again, it's just like working with him. He's just the trumpet player or the MD, but then you do have a glance, and then there might be, for instance, some shows that we've done together, like Amdram productions of things like Sister Act or whatever it is, and there'll come a specific point in the show that we've spoken about on the way home and laughed about, and when it gets to that point in the show, we always look at each other and have a laugh. It's not a dynamic you have with anybody other than your own flesh and blood.
Yeah, and I think there's sometimes, I don't know how you if you've had this, but I certainly do, that sometimes the music drops away and you just think, that's my granddad over there.
Yeah.
And that just gives you the best feeling when you're thinking, I'm doing this with possibly the musician who I respect and love the most above any other.
Yeah.
And I'm here right next to them, and it's that's always a bit of a special feeling, and and we always have like you say, you always have the little debriefs on the way home, or if when we were driving away to different places after a gig, we'd always have a little chat on the phone in the car, or if we pull over for a coffee somewhere, and just have a little conversation, and whether it's about the gig or something else, it's always that those little times are always special, because I do think not a lot of other people who would have this kind of relationship with their grandparent. For me, it's like where you're not only in a family sense, but also in a business and a work sense as well. That I don't take that for granted, and I'm always really thankful that I'm lucky enough to have it.
Well, I think that's a very nice way to round off this today's episode of Groovecast. I think we'll thank everybody for listening and watching if you're watching on YouTube. And feel free to tag us if you've got any live shows that you want to share with us, any experiences you've gone through. Make sure to give us a tag on Instagram or Facebook. What's the handle, Charlie?
It's at Groovecast UK.
That's the one.
on Instagram, Facebook, and you can find this. You'll be able to find this podcast on our Podbean and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well as YouTube, of course, if you want to watch two northern lads having a chat via camera.
Yeah, see our handsome faces.
Of course.
Right.
So
thank you for listening.
That's episode 4 done and dusted, and we thank you again, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you next time.